So this is Totally Unscripted. Welcome to our latest show. So I think we're continuing a little bit of a theme here.
It is.
So we had last week, we had Document AI. So you can find a recording on our website and YouTube channel for that. So we were talking about physical documents and digital documents. And quite often the scenario is you've got data and signatures and so on in those. And so this week we've got DocuSign. And looking at some of the numbers, I can't believe anyone's never heard of DocuSign before. So I don't think there's much of an introduction required. But Charles, is there any highlights for you?
I think there is some highlights for me. When you think about the process, right? And you mentioned, workflow of documentation. The hardest part, the last mile, is validating the validity of that document. And DocuSign's found a great niche starting with doing that. And I think they're nearly a 20-year-old company now. But when you look at their assets and you look at their solutions and you look at their offerings, it's actually a huge, huge business process. And it's pretty amazing what they've been able to accomplish and how they've been able to help not just, folks, processing documents, but developers really enable solution making on their platform with their tools. The extensive number of APIs is amazing. So I'm super impressed and super excited to hear about their business.
Steve, you ever used DocuSign? You come across DocuSign before?
Sure, yeah, I have. Used it? Yeah, I have a business account, a personal account. Absolutely.
I think one of the big things for me is, as you mentioned, Charles, it's the API. So creating a service, but then creating a service that other people can use as well. So let's hear from the experts for that service. So we're delighted to have Jeremy and also Nima, both from DocuSign, on the show. So should we start off with some light introductions? Jeremy, do you just want to say a couple of things about yourself and your background?
Sure, yeah. Happy to be here, everyone. I'm on the product team over at DocuSign on one of the API-focused teams here. Basically been doing the product thing and
Hey, Jeremy, we're getting a little bit of internet demons on your
API companies months ago, as they've been continuing. Okay, try that again. I always have the backup computer if needed. Not sure you heard there. Basically, I've been working on APIs for many years at DocuSign recently. I joined them as they were really expanding and building out many products, but also expanding on the API front. And always happy to join in for any Google initiatives. Charles, I've been working with Google as well as the GDE for quite a while now.
Yeah, so a couple of things before we dive too deep into it. Welcome, Jeremy, for folks who haven't realized it or maybe not aware. Jeremy's been around Workspace for a super long time, and he is actually a Workspace GDE. Jeremy and I met many years ago now at one of our events, and he wandered into a room and started talking about all the wonderful things he knows about actually building and working on Workspace. And so he joined us, and he's your insights have been great over the years. So happy to have you here. Who's joining us? Nima, tell us about yourself and your role.
Hey guys, happy to be here as well. My name is Nima Poulad. I'm a senior software engineer at DocuSign, and I'm in charge of all the SDKs that DocuSign releases. All the 5 languages that we support and all the APIs that support. All of it is all me. I know, no pressure, right? I've been at DocuSign for just about a year. It's been an amazing ride, and I'm looking forward to our discussion today.
Awesome. So it's quite a big thing. I was saying to everybody before the show, and of course I know DocuSign. I've used DocuSign personally and professionally, but I was blown away by the amount of resources, the APIs, the opportunities that you afford developers. And so I can't wait to dig into that. But before we do, just in case anybody doesn't really understand how you position your business and what it is, who'd like to take a shot at really kind of summing up DocuSign as some of your offerings?
Yeah, well, I think, DocuSign is well known for digital signatures, being able to get content signed without the paper trail. And in many ways, it's actually more secure, as there are many ways of verifying who's actually signing. And they've been around since 2003, focused on that. But as we can see, there's a lot more to DocuSign than that today. There's notarization. So there's a lot about user verification, user IDs. There's a lot going on this CLM side of things, on workflow to make digital signatures, not just about digital signatures, but be really a part of various business processes of just getting things done at your company and working across companies. Hopefully our marketing team doesn't quote me verbatim on that, but that's what I'd like to pitch, that they're going beyond eSignature today.
Absolutely. No, and we'd love to hear more about it. Okay.
I think what's really impressive is I was reading you've got the DocuSign Developer Conference coming up and later in the month, next month, in fact. In fact, DocuSign has a core business that it's doing, but in terms of the number of developers and partners that are using the DocuSign platform, is like, I think the quoted figure is 60% of all transactions are by partners and developers. So that seems like a huge figure. Is that a part of the business that is really looked after and catered for?
Yeah, it's the magic of APIs, and I'm not surprised when I joined DocuSign of those numbers. So I had worked with DocuSign years ago, going back about 13 years when I was working at Box. Back in 2008, we were a partner of DocuSign. DocuSign was a much smaller company back then, and we were just working with their APIs for eSignature. But we can see over time what's happened with DocuSign, both as they've expanded horizontally on the product side and as they've enabled all these APIs. The company at its core has a customer-facing product, but clearly the APIs are a key component to the success. So many of our customers rely on those APIs to be part of their own experience, to work with their own existing tools.
No, you're absolutely right. We saw the success there. We see you've listed, over 350 integrations from other organizations. You're, roughly 100,000 developers are active in your ecosystem building solutions, which is a pretty massive number. And so super, super interesting that you said. One thing I was just checking out here, I love, and this is actually written on your developer site. You have an API for everything, and that's kind of your motto and your tagline, which, Nima, you keep pretty busy. There are a lot of APIs. What are some of the APIs that are available? What are some of the things that developers can do through the APIs? What's kind of the quick list?
Well, if you ever use the DocuSign admin, anything that you can do there, we expose the APIs publicly, so you can build your own integrations. We have a lot of real estate companies and law firms that build their own workflows, right? So if the client has a document, it's automatically generated, the lawyer is tagged, and the customer is populated, and all this done automatically. We have some pretty cool APIs where, if there's an update to your document, then we send a notification to your webhook directly, right? So we created all these APIs so that you never even have to pull our endpoints to get a status updates. I can go through a whole list of cool things that we've done, but just take my word for it that if there's something you can imagine with the document being signed, there's probably API out there that does it. And you can always reach out to us, or we'll tell you how you can use the endpoints.
So Jeremy, you're product manager, obviously, for managing the APIs. And one of the things you were saying is you've got to figure out how to actually make these easy to use and bring them all together and make them successful, but also you're supporting massive product teams behind you with all these different initiatives. What's that take? What's your job like?
Yeah, so first of all, I'm not the PM for all of our APIs. I am APM on one of the teams that works on APIs at DocuSign today. There was a time when I knew the whole DocuSign API team. That was 13 years ago, when it was a much smaller company. As Nima mentioned, we have so many APIs now. It's not just the admin API or an API just for notarization, or the Click API to streamline the ability to handle the website terms and conditions and agreements. But industry specific, Nima mentioned lawyers and in real estate. we have the Rooms product, which is a product just for the real estate industry, and the Rooms team has APIs around that, with many more to come. Now, as you have all these different product areas with various APIs, you want to make it easy for developers to work with all of these APIs. So the original APIs really were on eSignature, and that's a separate team. We worked very closely with that team, but they have their existing APIs. And working with all of these other teams who are trying to get their APIs in such a way that they're highly functional, but also someone who's working on an app with DocuSign can very easily work across these APIs. Nima was also talking quite a bit about our SDKs. That's a big component to our team, so that all these teams, as they're working on their APIs, well, they work with us to actually get the SDKs released. We're here to make the process of getting good, solid APIs planned, built, and launched much easier, and to make sure there's also that solid developer experience. I'm sure you all know, and this has been known across many APIs, only so many developers will actually call an API directly. We acknowledge that does happen, but most of the time they're using SDKs, other code samples that are specific to their use cases. And we're working with these teams to make sure that that layer of supportive tools, the SDKs as well, are really solid. So there's definitely a lot of coordination, a lot of communication required in a place like this. I've worked at many startups where it's different. You're working on just one API. There's plenty of communication you have to work on. You have to work on across teams. But when each team is working on a different API, it can be more of a challenge to really scale this and make sure that all these teams are coordinated. Luckily, the culture is very good at DocuSign, so it's much easier to work cross-functionally.
So how many programming languages do you support with your APIs, or does it depend on the API itself?
Nima, you want to respond to that one?
Sure. I mean, we support the big five, right? We have C#, Java, Node, PHP, Ruby. We also support iOS and Android. Yeah, so I guess 7 if I counted correctly. Yeah.
Okay.
So someone's coming fresh, they found your website and your developer website. What's the onboarding like for someone interested in building on the DocuSign platform? Is there verification needed or anything like that, or can you get started and then do other verification type things further down the line?
So we have our developer center, our documentation, and then of course the console. So our APIs are publicly documented. So anyone can come to our site, find guides, find the API references. They want to dive right into the APIs directly, or documentation on our SDKs and our code samples. So plenty of information is available without registering. And of course, this is not like a mapping API. This is an API where you need an account. So yes, you do need to register as a developer, but once you do, you can create an integration key and get things configured to build an application with us.
What I would add to that is that we also have a bunch of quick starts where we generate the project file for you, and it has a lot of examples on how to do different things with the eSign, Rooms, and Click, and all the APIs that we have. So you can literally just put in your integration code, and then you get a project file that is ready to go, and you can start playing with our APIs.
That's awesome. Hey, I know Martin's already flashed a banner up for your developer conference. If you do that again, that'd be awesome. Are either of you or both of you going to be presenting at that? Do you have a session? Is there something you should tell folks to tune in for?
Go ahead, Jeremy.
Go ahead. We're both presenting.
Awesome. I understand there's a session that you also have with someone from our team. Is that correct? Awesome.
Yeah. So that one, so I'm presenting with Christian over on the Workspace team, and yeah, what is going on? We've worked DocuSign has worked quite a bit with Google Workspace over many years. So it's one reason why I was glad to join DocuSign, since I'd been working with DocuSign. I'd also been working with Workspace for many years, and we've had that integration with Gmail and Google Drive and Google Docs, the add-ons. But what we're actually presenting on is tooling that will enable other developers to better integrate DocuSign with Workspace in general, and not just rely on the integrations that we built with Workspace. And that's namely done by utilizing, speaking of SDKs and libraries and code samples, Google Apps Script. So yeah, we have, we're still tweaking it, but we have basically an API library for DocuSign that works with Apps Script. So for those who really want to integrate deeply with Google Sheets, other aspects of Google Workspace, or for those who want to build your own add-ons, we're going to make it easier through an API library to connect your add-ons and your other code directly with DocuSign. So at our conference, we're working with Christian over on the Workspace team to share what's been built and how to do that with Apps Script and the DocuSign API.
Awesome. Is that new stuff? Is that new content?
This is new content. So we have had those add-ons with Workspace for many years, but the Apps Script library, this is going to be new.
And Nima, are you responsible for this as well? This is part of your background?
Yeah. I helped Jeremy putting some of those demos together. Gotcha. Yeah, but my session is less shiny than Jeremy's. I'll be presenting, our Postman collection, and we're partnering with the Postman team to show off some of their Postman Workspace features that they're rolling out. So that's going to be exciting.
Okay, so without stealing any of your thunder on your sessions or on any announcements or any topics, can you give us a little preview of what the Apps Script libraries entail? Is there any details or processes on how you get started, or even where you'd find more information about it? I know I don't want to, again, premature anything, but what can you tell folks? Or should we just
so we haven't published the library yet. That's going to happen around the time of the conference.
Okay.
And yeah, by the way, while Nima is presenting on Postman, he did actually develop the library. All I've done was make some tweaks for something we can demo. But at the conference, we're going to demo this, how it works, and by then we'll have a solid one for the community to start trying out. Where it's going to be released, I would just keep a lookout on our Dev Center. Most likely we'll just have it where we have our other SDKs. We have a Node SDK as well, so things will just be placed alongside it. It is convenient that Apps Script essentially is JavaScript. So what we had already with our experience already with JavaScript SDKs, it was very easy to port something over. This is something that will take more and more iteration over time as we continue to add more and more APIs to the DocuSign ecosystem. But what I can acknowledge is that there's going to be a focus more on our core APIs in eSignatures initially. But there's always room to add more APIs to these libraries over time, especially as we get more feedback from developers and what they want to do to work with DocuSign and Workspace.
I wonder, Nima, what was your Apps Script experience like as a developer? Were there any kind of gotchas that you had to work through? I know you've got a couple of Medium posts sharing some of the things you've learned along the way.
Yeah, my experience was zero. I think Jeremy was the person who really got me started on this, and he has a lot of experience in this field, so it made my life a little bit easier. The big question that I still have in my head, and up to this point bugs me, is really understanding what Google Apps Script environment is. It's not a browser, and it's not a full Node environment. So what is it exactly, right? And it seems like from the documents that I read, it looks like it's a modified version of a local node. So that took getting used to, right? Like the libraries that you have that you normally use will not work in Apps Script. So just finding workarounds and finding solutions for it was, I think, the trickiest part of Apps Script for me.
So on top of, obviously not, a road less traveled or things that weren't apparent, what are some of the things that you enjoyed about it that you found, wow, that was surprisingly useful? And conversely, what are some of the things you're like, wow, that could have been different?
Honestly, what I loved the most was that I could just write code in my browser, debug it, and I had to install nothing, right? I could just move from my Mac to my, Chromebook, which, by the way, I have a Chromebook, by the way. And and like everything seamlessly just worked. So that part of it was pretty awesome. At the same time, with AppScript being one of the newer environments, I also run into a lot of issues. Like I did find the debugging sometimes didn't really work. It would abruptly just stop working. So definitely some headaches there that's going to be hammered out soon, I'm sure. But I love the fact that you just open the browser, start coding. Like it doesn't get any easier than this.
Yeah, and you mentioned, what is this thing? It's kind of this in between thing, and you're absolutely right. The key audience has always been, hey, I can, I don't have to do anything. It's there. I don't install anything, configure anything. It just works. The key challenge that you recognize is obviously there's a bit of a cliff that you can come up against if you take it too far or expect it to do too much. And so folks like Martin and Steve and the rest of the folks tuning in normally are kind of used to some of those bugaboos. But the attractiveness is what keeps people coming back. At least we hope, and it's pretty useful. The other thing I love is just the tight reach into the rest of the environment. With a couple lines of code, I'm actually manipulating a document. I'm manipulating a Gmail, or I can throw up a panel and collect user information pretty quickly. And so from that standpoint, it's brilliant. It's trying to learn what you don't know yet, or what you should know, or what others have probably fumbled through is the hard part. And it's definitely something that it's an acquired taste sometimes for developers to dive into.
Now, when it comes to supporting your APIs, I can imagine with so many users and developers, you could potentially be busy just with support. Do you have like a community for developers to help each other with?
There is an API community within DocuSign. So we have our forums. We have a means of gathering feedback, and of course we have developer relations folk. We have technical writing folk. It's quite a few people who are working on APIs, and yeah, I mean, people here, we all know that that's often the secret sauce to a good developer experience. It's not just having solid APIs; it's having really good support and communication. So yeah, for those who are signing up who have questions, we certainly have services and people who are ready to help.
That's super awesome. And you mentioned it. And one thing I love is you've got, first of all, we have a very similar developer center location, developers.docusign.com or developers.google.com/workspace. I was blown away by not just the number of APIs you have, but the resources you have up there and the content you have up there. And your team's done a wonderful job of really kind of, again, doing the last mile to make a developer platform more than just APIs, but really an ecosystem you can rely on. So congrats to your team for putting that best effort forward. It's pretty awesome.
Thank you. It was before my time, but great to see what they've built out. And some of it goes to these little things like, oh, you want to download some code, you want to download SDK or a quick start code. We'll ask you some questions and generate something for you and recommend the right code for you. It's not just here are the docs, here are the samples, here's the quick start, go for it. We ask you some questions and we try to guide you from there.
That's awesome. I think we want that. That's pretty awesome.
In terms of DocuSign's presence in Workspace, and so you've mentioned that you're developing a client library for AppScript. Did that avenue come out of market research or demand from the wider audience, or just horizon scanning and just seeing that Workspace potentially has a lot of potential DocuSign customers on it?
I'd say it comes from a few factors. And first of all, we have had our integration with Google for many years. We also have had experience developing SDKs on specific platforms. So most of the SDKs, PHP, Ruby, Python, Java, they're just about languages. We have a couple that are specific to mobile and or in iOS. We do have a toolkit for Salesforce's Apex. And so we've been interested in these sort of things. As you know, I've though worked for a very long time with AppScript. I have worked with Apex a bit in the past, but I find the AppScript it fits so nicely and it works so easily. I've hacked together a few things in the past. I decided one day at a company I want to make it easier to create agendas for events, because people keep forgetting to create agendas and have minutes and actually have organized meetings. So what if I had a little script that plugged into Google Calendar and Google Docs and made it real easy to, when you're creating an event, this script would detect that you've created the event and go and like copy a Google Doc and give you an agenda template. And these things are just very easy to do with Apps Script. Now we do have customers and customer feedback for Workspace. I can't share the specifics there, but there is a factor including developer feedback. And admittedly, some of it is just, we've had a lot of good experiences with Workspace in the past. We're very excited for what Apps Script can do. We know that there's ongoing improvement there. And it also is just pretty easy to set up a library in Apps Script if you have the right bits in place. We already had the Node SDK, and of course we had to make certain tweaks to make that work with Apps Script. But it wasn't too tricky. In fact, as we acknowledge, much of our SDK code is automatically generated through an open source SDK generator that takes an API schema like Swagger or newer open API options and generates these libraries and SDKs. There isn't anything officially there for Apps Script today. And that is something that I've been encouraging before joining DocuSign as something to consider. But there's Node, there are other JavaScript generators there that get pretty close. So that makes it very easy to simply make your APIs more accessible to developers within the Workspace community. And we're very excited to see what developers there are going to be able to do. We've gotten plenty of feedback from current customers, but we know there's more within the Workspace community. We look forward to working with them.
Yeah, awesome. I have a question for you, maybe an odd question, but I would imagine a large number of users of your end products, both yours directly and what your developers, your third parties produce, your integrations produce. Obviously, there's enterprise solutions focused on businesses, but a lot of your customer base is consumers, right? And we know consumers obviously are a super large target audience, and buy a house or do legal documents or whatever, and it's somebody with a Gmail account and a Docs account, and they're doing this stuff. Is there any differences or added pressure or challenges that you hear developers face or that you see directly that you have to do because you have such a wide swath of kind of responsibility out there? Is there any nuances?
When it comes to consumer, SMB, and enterprise, I've given talks at other places about the differences between them. And what I'll just say here is they're very, very different. Yeah. I've worked with many startups that thought they could straddle SMB and enterprise simultaneously. And at best, what will happen is they'll test the waters with both, and whichever one lands well, they'll focus. Companies who really think, it's the same thing going from consumer to SMB, they use it the same way. And in DocuSign's case, it's a very eclectic mix of consumers, of small businesses, and of large enterprises. Now, for developers, I'd say the biggest item here is that we have, first of all, we have customers who are building apps for internal use. So many enterprises need to bring us into their own workflows, into other products that they use. But then we also have, just like our add-ons, those apps that are meant to be distributed for small businesses to use, for consumers to use. And so we're working with both developers who are building things just for their own company, but also for those partners who are launching apps externally. I can also acknowledge that we do see a mix of experience from developers. And this is a common thing also for enterprise products, and especially those that have to integrate with various other enterprise tools, some of which may be on-prem or some of which may just otherwise be legacy solutions. So for those developers who are, they have some experience with coding, they may even still be learning how to code, and we can sometimes identify that. There are those who are really experienced, and there are even sometimes developers who have experience with development, but they may have been used to working on desktop applications or on-prem software, and they're not actually as used to working on RESTful web APIs. That's a common challenge for modern enterprise tech, and it's been actually a great experience seeing it, a challenge, but seeing how we have to work with different kinds of developers, different levels of experience, different backgrounds, and being able to support them all.
And I imagine, because obviously what you're doing, your process is you're kind of the validation, that kind of last mile thing. This document has actually been signed by this person, just to put it in layman terms that I understand. There's also security considerations that are different, right? I mean, is there anything that you have to do specifically with your APIs or with your developer community to help them manage security differently?
So this we can talk about for many hours, but there's security in the product, and there's security in our APIs, like the notarization tool. The idea there being that for certain aspects of signature, you can't just receive an email, prove that it's you, and sign it. There may be a more formal process of even having a witness, a virtual witness, as part of the system. Or just having extra layers to make sure that the person who's signing is who they say they are. Mm-hmm. And so there's that sort of security in the features we're providing, products that we're providing to customers to enable them to use DocuSign in a more secure manner. Then, of course, for any API, you really want to make sure that your APIs are secure. What I'll say here, high level, as someone who's worked on APIs for many years and has seen many dark moments in Silicon Valley from companies who basically the APIs were the weakest link. It was an afterthought, and we caught security vulnerabilities through those APIs. Well, we have encrypted secrets. We have OAuth in our system. We have roles and permissions. We have administrative functionality. We make sure that you're not able to say, as a very simple access administrative functions if you're not actually an admin. So we have that kind of gradual permissioning system in our APIs. And we're constantly watching this because we have, again, various teams working on APIs, and we want that process of generating SDKs to be smooth. We want the ability for developers to work across these APIs to have a smooth experience, but also to make sure that each team is coordinated so that the data is secure, the roles and permissions are aligned, and that we are keeping that level of security that we have maintained all these years.
Well, let's drill down on the bad actor thing again. What if...
Oh, Steve.
I know. Well, I have SMS add-on and the game. It's like playing a game of chess with the bad actors. But anyhow, so is there any chance that you add an extra service to say, hey, we just scanned this contract and it looks spammy? Do you ever go to that extent? You try to eliminate bad actors from using your product?
So you're asking if we can, say, identify if there's an issue specifically within a document.
Yeah, like if I think about my SMS texting example, if the content is given to some sort of AI or ML thing, and it comes back to say the likelihood, the score is this is a bad actor. The content flags it, right? And I'm thinking from a document standpoint, is there some extra customer service level that you can say, wow, this looks so bad?
So this is not exactly our department, but we certainly work with teams that are involved in these sort of extra functionality within DocuSign. To make sure I understand what you're asking about, I've worked with email APIs and SMS APIs. A challenge they do have is a spammer figures out they can use them to send a bunch of automated messages. Yeah. I'm not going to say we actually worked at a place where we were dealing with fax spamming, where we were basically enabling the use of like a digital faxing service for free. And we figured it wasn't going to cost us much until someone figured out they could send 1,000 plus faxes a day for free. And so they're actually using this like API to send a bunch of faxes. Now, in DocuSign's case, I think we're talking about like a hypothetical scenario where someone is trying to like send spam documents through DocuSign.
Yeah, the type that says, hey, you've been awarded $10 million. I need your signature. And they take that signature for other purposes, right?
To like get them to sign like a document for something else in our system. Interesting. Okay, so it's less the spam and more the basically sneaky, get you to sign something you don't know what you're signing.
I will add that we have a product named DocuSign Monitor, and it is designed exactly for that purpose, but right now it's only enabled for our bigger enterprise customers. And it will do exactly what you described. It will scan the documents, even if the PDF file is a malicious one that is designed to blue screen your computer because you're using Windows for some reason or stuff like that, it will flag and it would notify the administrator. So we do have the product, but it is a paid feature and is mainly for enterprises at this point.
Sure. Wow, that's great.
There is an API for that too, by the way.
There is, yeah. And SDK.
Literally everything, Charles. An API is literally
There is an API.
everything.
It puts it right in their motto. It's an API for everything, and I'm really starting to believe them because they do have it for everything. Hey, so where do you guys? What's next? Where do you guys go? What are you working on? What's the next step? What are some of the things? Again, anything, don't share secrets, of course, but what are some of the things you project going forward that you're working on to improve the developer experience, to bring more DocuSign to the world?
So we do have to be careful with what we officially share, although it won't be long before you hear some of it at our conference later next month. What I can acknowledge is DocuSign's always been iterating and enhancing their APIs. I've seen as an outsider for over 13 years, and we're only more invested in it today. DocuSign really has one of the reasons why I joined was I could see that they really had been a pioneer. There was a lot of trial and error 10 to 13 years ago in APIs. And, when I was at Box, we had some things that worked, we had some things that didn't work, and we learned from them, and then we iterated upon that. DocuSign as well. What you're seeing now is, many new products, many new APIs, notarization, monitoring API, administrative functionality. Many of these products are new. They're on their V1 or their V2. You may have even seen just in the last few weeks some V2.1 API releases. And so many of these teams, they're working on a small iteration. Some of them are working on their V2s and V3s. These are meant to add functionality. These are meant to make these APIs easier. They're also meant to make the APIs across these different teams work well together. I think it is safe to acknowledge that as DocuSign's grown, we've also acquired many companies that also had APIs that when I reviewed them, they were great APIs, but they had maybe a different auth system. And so these teams are updating their APIs as well. Watch for enhancements to our SDKs. We made quite a few enhancements just over the last few months. We can acknowledge there are some bigger things coming to make the experience of going beyond the APIs into the libraries and helper functions and all that's coming along as well. We can acknowledge that there is more work going on in the developer UI as well, the developer center, the console. Can't share the specifics, but we have team members just focused on that. And keep a lookout for Apps Script, because when Apps Script goes out, we're going to want feedback from team members. We are looking forward to updating the Apps Script SDK as well.
Yeah, you bring up an awesome point there. As you know, most of the folks that tune in to watch this are doing some sort of workspace development or aspiring to, or companies are asking for it. How can they actually get involved and provide feedback specific to the workspace journey? How can we actually kind of make it the best of both worlds better? Is there specific things on your side that they should do, or certain ways they could talk back through our community? Like what would you recommend they do to kind of help improve the experience between the two? Obviously, they can come to your session that you and Chris are at and give tons of feedback. But what are some of the other ways that?
That's where I'd start actually. Check out the sessions. Check out the Apps Script code once we open it up. And there's the developer forum, there's the community site. You have my name, you have Nima's name. You can reach out to us. You should probably reach out to me because I don't want Nima to get too distracted. But anything that goes to me, I'll relay over to Nima. But you can track me down on LinkedIn. And before the conference, if you were thinking of working with DocuSign, if you were already working with the DocuSign API, and you were trying to make it work better with Workspace, we'd love to hear what you were trying to do. So just reach out to me, and I'd love to gather the use cases, and we can make sure that's reflected and what we're doing to provide those tools to make it easier to connect DocuSign with Workspace. And just to add to that, we know many have as we discussed earlier here, people remember DocuSign for digital signatures, but there's a lot more to DocuSign.
Yeah.
A big component is DocuSign CLM. That workspace experience that's coming along. And I think that's going to actually fit very well with what's going on with Workspace.
For folks who may not understand that, and folks may even be new to CLM, and besides being my initials, which is ironic, contract lifecycle management. Can you just give us a little bit of a brief? What does that entail? What does that look like? People think, oh, workflow with documents, but can you kind of just elaborate a little?
As a simple example, I was going through the process of buying a home. What does that take? That takes, getting pre-approved for a mortgage. Once you go through all the pre-approval processes, and they're having you sign a lot of stuff, they're having you provide a lot of information about your bank account, your financial history. But then when you're actually buying the home, there's a lot going on between the buyer and the seller, the title company. So we have our lender, we have our buyer's agent we're working with, we have our seller's agent, we have also a title company. Yep. Now, when I was going through this, certain teams were using DocuSign and certain teams weren't using DocuSign. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Consequently, we had a few hiccups in the process. Yeah. I'm not going to rip at the title company because there were circumstances, but the title company at times was actually out in the loop in certain details of the contract, or the lender actually wasn't, had to confirm with the title company the actual date of closure. And so when it comes to documents, sending documents, signing the documents, often it's part of a multi-step process between teams and between companies. And it's best to have a workflow where you can keep track of what's going on or set up the steps. Once something is signed by one person, who signs it next? Once one thing is completed, there may be another document that has to go out to the title company. And this requires a custom flow. So that's where this experience is really coming along, where DocuSign is becoming more and more of this enterprise solution that's not just about signatures. There's plenty around signatures. There's also about making this work with everything else you have to do in your business and making your business run more smoothly. I can see also how that can work very well with Workspace, which has these key tools that people are generally using. Yep. Email, documents, and calendaring. They're essential, and they tend to go together. I've already, as you know, before joining DocuSign, hacked solutions that involved Gmail and Google Docs. And I whipped up that product management tool that could take a Google spreadsheet and from content in that sheet, auto-generate a Google slide presentation. And with what we're already seeing with the add-on today that works, that DocuSign has with both Gmail and Google Docs, and actually also the old Google Drive integration, that logically all of this can actually flow very well together. So anyone who's really using Workspace within your enterprise, I'm sure many of those are working with DocuSign as well. Enabling these two APIs, our signature APIs, workflow APIs, and utilizing Apps Script, allowing all these APIs to work together can create a very seamless workflow.
And you're absolutely right. And if you would, Steve, do you have a specific question, by the way?
Well, yeah, I was just going to follow up. Does that include if conditions like, oh, Steve Webster lives in Florida, give him the document for hurricane insurance, that sort of thing?
There is something like that in the interface today. Yes, you're having that sort of a mapping, and yes, conditions. We are generally a fan of IFTTT kind of things, both in API world and in a general nice.
Let me ask you questions. I think it's a fascinating thing. Like I said, every use case that anybody that gets documents, and the home buying experience is one, legal processing, wills, estates, trusts, all those things make sense. And there's ununified processes out there that can drop the ball and make it hard along the way. Obviously you build your own solutions, there's third parties building solutions, but we find a lot of, especially the smaller businesses, lawyers or real estate companies don't necessarily have the resources or the developers to do it. Where do you see the market going for that? Are there people looking to buy more than build more than buy? Obviously you're building APIs, you're hoping they're building, but where's the sweet spot for a lot of these CLMs to come to market?
Yeah, just watching the clock, because that's another one of those, like, we can present for hours on this topic. But a few things to consider. When working on APIs for many years, you want to see, integrations work more seamlessly. And sometimes we see connector tools, node-based systems, or the Zapiers of the world that make it really easy if you have a simple API to connect via an interface. Can you give me one moment?
Sure. Yes, so this is the part of the show we love when he actually has a guest. He has a guest. That's funny.
I actually do not know what just happened.
We are live.
Calls. But anyways, there's always thought of like, what kind of interface can you put on top of APIs? And sometimes these connectors like Zapier come along that way of how do you make integrations easier? But sometimes they don't come in from the API angle. They just come in from the user experience angle of what are people trying to do and how do you make that kind of flow simpler? DocuSign CLM, a big component to this is saying, okay, well, you should be able to connect things. You should be able to define these flows without having to be a developer. I won't really call that like a low-code, no-code thing. I mean, the term is still being defined, in my opinion. There are a lot of things I would categorize as low-code, no-code, others don't. CLM isn't meant to be, CLM isn't, at its core, is just meant to be a customer-facing product, but there is an API there, and that allows this to work better with other tools. I think there are some things that are going to be customer-specific, industry-specific, like, DocuSign Rooms, that's really just about supporting those in the real estate space. And there's a lot that's built on top of the existing DocuSign products, and on top of that, they have their own APIs as well. So the intent there is like for a very specific use case, you don't have to be a developer. I wouldn't necessarily call it, I wouldn't really call it low-code, no-code. Just we have some products that are very specific to the real estate industry, so it just works for you. But yes, the APIs are there, and through things like App Script, the nice thing about working with a tool like App Script, for the developers who don't want to host everything, don't want to have all the infrastructure, just want to have something light. It's we're now accessible through that.
Awesome. No, that's perfect. Hey, you mentioned we're coming up on time, and I wanted to ask you, Jeremy, if you take your DocuSign hat off for a second, put your GDE hat on. One of the things I've always loved having conversations with you is you always have great insights on where Workspace is and where it could be, where it could go better for developers. And so I know the folks in the community may not have heard from you for a while since you've jumped inside of DocuSign and kind of went deep there. But I know you pay attention to Workspace quite a bit. What are some of the things you're seeing or hearing or like to see better? What's kind of your state of the union, if you would, from what you've seen in the Workspace world recently?
Yeah, and there's a lot from my experience before DocuSign and much from my experience while at DocuSign. When it comes to we can talk about the add-on system. We can talk about App Script. When it comes to App Script, whipped up a few scripts in the past, especially during COVID. That was my opportunity to like hack away at a bunch of things I really wanted to get to. And a few things that came up. I think during this time there were updates to the App Script IDE, which is great to see. Yep. And that also, including that interface, is a better system to handle libraries. But immediately we noticed, how do you make libraries accessible? Oh, we have to share our library. We have to provide this ID. You have to copy the ID into your system. There isn't much information on any updates going on, except you have to trust that the ID is correlated to maybe something that we're hosting in GitHub and something that we're updating there and sharing our version information. And the ability to be able to find these sort of libraries as a developer on App Script, I think is going to be great long term. And something else I'm encouraging those who want to build their APIs. There's the library generators, the SDK generators. I was, before joining DocuSign, hoping to see something to generate these in an App Script. Now, we've confirmed that the JavaScript solutions, JavaScript modules within these generators, they do the trick. You need to do some tweaking afterwards, but they do the trick. But I can imagine having a nice system specifically for App Script for anyone with an API to very easily generate these libraries for other developers to consume.
Yeah, without giving secrets away, I know that's something that Keith and team are exploring and evaluating.
Well, someone's already done it. If you go
That's
digging
good to
around,
hear. Yeah, I think we knew from more.
Spencer Easton, a couple of years ago, he developed something to digest the Google Discovery API and generate Google libraries for Apps Script. It's very rough around the edges, but I really hard to agree with you that having something that anyone can use to generate libraries would be great.
Yeah. And I guess item 3 on Apps Script, and if there's time, we can talk about add-ons too. Nima, I'm sure, also has more specific feedback for Apps Script.
Yeah, I'd love to get your feedback on the add. Like I said, obviously we know you're an add-on and it's publicly available and it's one of the better, well-known ones in the marketplace. I'd love to get your feedback on that, on what you've seen, what you've liked and not liked.
Sorry, Jeremy. I'm going to jump in there because I was a little bit overexcited about all the things I want to say about Google Apps Script. So number one thing is that, we need to get a token to call our endpoints. And what I quickly realized is that, there's no APIs that Apps Script provides that will take an RSA private key right now. You accept a private key, but not an RSA private key. So one thing that we had to do manually was to essentially manually convert our RSA private key into a normal private key. And then there was an API that could consume that, right? And the challenge with that is that DocuSign only provides you with the RSA private key from our admin dashboard. So just with that, we're leaving our developers with the manual stuff they would have to do by themselves. That's number one. Number two is, why not an NPM package management? I feel like Node went so long to bring in NPM. Now we're going back to bundling everything inside a file and providing it over the cloud or something like that. And last but not least, we realized that we're using Super Agent to make our network calls to our APIs, and we quickly realized Super Agent is not supported. We tried with Fetch. Fetch was not supported, and we essentially discovered this URL fetch API that Google Apps Script provides. So immediately we have to go that manual step of going through our SDKs and scrapping all the Super Agent code out and putting URL fetch APIs instead. I could go on. I have a heavy heart sometimes with some of these things. And last but not least is the secret management, right? With our APIs, we're making API calls, which means we have a token, which means we are getting a JWT token generator, and that means we're going to have client secrets or private keys somewhere in our code. And we quickly realized there is no safe way that you can store your private key anywhere. And again, as you know, with a private key, it never expires. So if that thing is leaked, that's a giant security problem altogether. But on the other side, I like that none of these issues were particularly difficult to overcome, right? I found that the documentation was really good. It actually talked about some of these limitations that I mentioned as well. And I found that if you just read the documentation, it's really good at walking you through it. And I'm sure any developer can just follow that to be able to get their work done.
So first of all, that's awesome feedback and duly noted, and it's recorded. The second thing, you made a great segue for our next week's show, which is our documentation team. So we're going to have Nathan and Kara come and actually talk about how we actually maintain and manage our documentation. So tune in for that. So thanks for that segue. You threw that up there. It was easy for me to grab and take and run into. We're just about out of time. First of all, I just want to thank you for taking your time out and sharing with us your insights and where we have great overlap for developers between our two platforms. Also, again, just super impressed with what you guys have built personally. Congratulations on that. Look forward to your developer conference. Martin, Steve, what do you say? What do you think?
Yeah, I enjoyed today's show. I'm looking forward to the Apps Script library. So,
well, I think this is the thing when you open yourself to the world of Apps Script, you're opening yourself to many and varied, wonderful things. So I'm really looking forward to what some of your existing and new developers make of Apps Script and how it integrates into DocuSign. So we have to have you back on once the library's out and get you to maybe highlight some of the cool and interesting things that you've seen come out of the community.
Yeah, definitely. Do keep in touch. Let us know.
Definitely. Sure, we'd both be happy to help out there. We didn't get to chat as much about add-ons. Maybe we can save that for another time. Our team wasn't the team that built the add-on for but we've worked with add-ons.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks very much. As Charles mentioned, we're back same time next week, and we're looking at how to write good documentation. I think is which I think is a great skill to have in general. Being able to do technical writing. So hopefully you'll get some tips from that. Again, thanks to Nima and Jeremy for joining us. We hope your conference goes well and you get a lot of Totally Unscripted fans coming along to your session.
Thank you for having us. I enjoyed our talk for sure.
Until next time.
Thank you, everyone.
Happy scripting.